This video is titled In Memoriam because I had said at the beginning of this series of videos that the reason I started the channel was because my dad wanted me to continue talking about this so he could see me and have a conversation with me about it. Well, my dad died last week, and throughout the days I've been wondering if I should continue the channel or not, and then I thought I should, to honor his memory, thinking a little bit of also what St. Thomas Aquinas says in the first book of the Summa Theologia about memory. He says, a thing is said metaphorically to be written on the mind of anyone when it is firmly held in the memory. And I guess this is a way of me inscribing my father's presence in my memory, at least. And also because in the Middle Ages, and this is very important to my research, memory is kind of an obsession. There is a lengthy tradition of arts of memory, books written with techniques and how to improve and how to perfect memory. This was a part of basic education ever since classical antiquity. Varro called it literatio, this basic education, and that it was how to train and how to educate memory. And in the Middle Ages, there are many reasons why this obsession with memory continues. Many of them were simply logistical and financial. It was very costly to produce manuscripts. Just the materials to produce them, the ink, just the technique, like the knowledge of how to copy a manuscript was something that not even everyone who knew how to read, which was a very tiny percent of the population because mostly everybody was illiterate, not even that little portion of literate people, not all of them knew how to write properly. They were specialized copyists, and you had them in scriptoria, either in monasteries or later in the first cities, and it was very costly to produce a book, and even more risky to move it around. It was risky to move oneself around and anything of value around in the Middle Ages. The materials could be more or less perishable. The parchment, not all of it was equally good, the ink, etc., etc. So memory was still a very important tool to conserve knowledge. But in antiquity, it was even more important. Memory, in fact, is the mother of the Greek muses. And her name was Mnemosyne, and from there we have the word mnemonic, and I guess also the modern word meme in so much use in social media. But anyway, this importance of memory over writing in the Greek antiquity comes, for example, in the works of Plato, where he portrays Socrates as preferring memory over writing as more reliable and more important. In the Middle Ages, this continues. Also because ancient rhetoric, memory is one of the 5 canons of ancient rhetoric, and it contains the methods, the rhetorical devices, and rhetorical figures that were aids to remember an oral speech. So ever since antiquity, memory has been very important, has been more relied upon, and there is an ambiguity in the Middle Ages, coming from antiquity, but especially in the Middle Ages, in between the importance of memory and also the constraints of memory and the importance of writing as a way to preserve vast amounts of knowledge that don't fit into one individual person's memory. For example, St. Isidore of Seville in the 6th century has this to say, is in his etymologies. He says, "Indeed, letters are tokens of things, the signs of words, and they have so much force that the utterances of those who are absent speak to us without a voice, for they present words through the eyes, not through the ears. The use of letters was invented for the sake of remembering things which are bound by letters, lest they slip away into oblivion. With so great a variety of information, not everything could be learned by hearing, not retained in the memory." So for Isidore and for many scholars up to our days, reading was a visual act that helped you inscribe things in memory. Now, for me, this is very important because it's part of my research, obviously, the theme of memory and the cognitive implications of memory, the ways sensory integration plays a part in memory. But also because memory is tied to the emotions and the sensory perceptions that come with the acquisition of knowledge, but also because in the Middle Ages there's still this idea that writing is kind of a shorthand version of the truth and of what reality has available as knowledge. And also in the passing from Antiquity and the Middle Ages, which had only reading out loud, to the advent of silent reading in the Renaissance, because there was no silent reading in the Middle Ages, with very few exceptions, which were like the object of actual comments. Scholars who could read silently were admired and celebrated, because virtually everyone read out loud if they knew how to read, or things were read to them out loud if they didn't know how to read. And this survives even to our times, into judicial proceedings, for example, where we give so much weight to the oral presentation of evidence, even if the evidence already comes in the form of writing, to witness testimony, which is oral, and even in jury instructions, when jurors are told that if they are to rely upon either the written evidence or their recollection of what the evidence said during the trial, they're to rely on their recollection primarily. And as I said with the quote of Isidore Seville, him and many after him have considered this having to do with visual memory, but I don't agree with this. I am of the group of people who thinks that there, even in silent reading, there is this inner voice in your head that's telling you what the words are saying. It's reading it to yourself. You're reading it to yourself with your inner voice, and this is part of my research and part of what's important to me. In particular today, what that inner voice says, however, to me is memento mori, that Latin phrase that means remember you will die. And it's important in the Middle Ages, especially as part of the wider cultural context of the ars moriendi, or the art of dying, and it has to do with the fleeting and empty quality of earthly life and the fact that we're all going to die, so we need to lead an upright life. So remember you will die, memento mori, and this is the subject of many artistic, musical, poetical representations. We have all these images. We've seen the typical man gazing into the skull and reflecting upon the fact that he's going to die. We also have the very important cultural phenomenon linked to the plague that decimated Europe's population during the Middle Ages in several ways, of the danse macabre, these representations of people come from all walks of life, lay and clergy, elder and young, lay and religious. I'm not sure exactly what the difference is between these two, but they're different. Women, either single or married, and of course, musicians above all. We're all going to die, and death is the great equalizer. Everybody, doesn't matter how important or how humble, is the same the moment they die. And this was a very important theme, a leitmotif of the Middle Ages, and as I said, has very important representations in many cultural manifestations. For me, one of the most important for medieval Castilian literature is poetry, and it's, I think, represented in what, in my opinion, is the most accomplished, the most beautiful ever written funerary poem, which is Coplas a la muerte de su padre, of a Castilian poet who lived in the pre-Renaissance, and his name is Jorge Manrique. And this is like stanzas or verses or coplas. It's a special kind of stanza, poetical stanza in Castilian, on the death of his father. And I'm going to read the intro it and the last stanza of it to close this video in honor of my father. Let the slumbering soul remember. Let the mind awaken and rekindle, pondering how life fades away, how death comes forth silently, how swiftly pleasure dwindles, how upon its remembrance pain follows, how to us it seems all things past were better. And thus we see how the present passes in a moment and is gone. If wisely we judge, we will regard what has not come to pass as bygone. Let no one be deceived, no, into thinking that their hopes will last longer than what they beheld withstood, for all things will come to pass as they should. Our lives are the rivers flowing out to the sea, which is death. Straight there all dominions go to meet their end and waste away. There go the large rivers, there also streams and brooks, once together all alike, those who toil with their hands and the well-to-do. And thus, with such knowledge, all human perception forgotten, surrounded by his wife, his siblings, his children, his friends, he gave up his soul to him who bestowed it. May he keep it in heaven and in his glory. And though life passed away, much consolation has given us his memory.